It's such a pleasure to have Sherrilynn Bair on the podcast today. I met Sherrilynn at an education reform conference in November, and we got to chatting about what she has created in Idaho. She had said that she had listened to some of the episodes on this podcast and was really interested in individualized education options. And I kept hearing more and more about what she was creating in the Snake River School District in rural Blackfoot, Idaho. And I'm just so fascinated by this in-district innovative education model that Sherrilynn has helped bring to life over the last few years, and thrilled for her to share with everyone here about Snake River Online, which began as a K-8 online program with some hybrid options, some in-person options in 2020, with about 350 students, and today has over 1,300 students throughout Idaho, plus a long waiting list. We're going to hear all about it today. Sherrilynn Bair, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I'm so excited to be here. I was so excited to meet you in person in Atlanta. I first became acquainted with your work, I think the year before, when you did a panel discussion at Excel in Ed in Salt Lake City. And so I started listening to your podcast, and then I was really excited to meet you in person in Atlanta. So I'm really happy to be here, and I thank you so much for this opportunity to share what I think is a really valuable learning experience.
I am really excited to have you here. And I think what you've created is just so remarkable. It gives me hope that we can have significant, meaningful, sustainable educational change within a district. And you've sort of paved the way for that. So I'm excited for people to hear more about your program. But let's start, Sherrilynn, if we could, with kind of your background in education. You're a certified K-8 teacher with a master's degree in curriculum. Later, you went on to get your school librarian certificate. And now, in addition to being the founder and lead teacher of Snake River Online, this K-8, or now K-12, but you're in charge of the K-8 piece of this district program. You're also the district librarian for the Snake River School District. So you have this really fascinating professional background. How did it begin, and what were sort of your early teaching experiences like?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I really enjoy talking about education and learning. And I think it really began because I loved learning. And I was the PTA president for many years, and I had teachers that were really influential in my life. And I never really thought about becoming a teacher until I spent a lot of time in the schools working with the PTA and PTO. And I had a really great friend, Janice Green, who introduced me or encouraged me to go to school and to become a teacher. So I got my bachelor's degree in K-8 at Idaho State University, and my first teaching job was really exciting and different. I was a reading specialist at a Bureau of Indian Affairs school, the Chauvin Junior Senior High School on the Fort Hull Indian Reservation. And I loved my experience there. It was energizing and depleting at the same time, because it was so difficult to see students who were so bright and so gifted not really be able to succeed. So then my next experience was I worked for the Idaho Virtual Academy. The Idaho Virtual Academy was a charter school, and it was an online charter school, and it started in 2000, I believe, actually 2002 probably. And so it was one of the very first charter schools in the state of Idaho. And I was really excited to work with an online school and see that there was a way to help families who needed and wanted to learn differently. And so that was my next experience. And then I've always loved libraries and reading. And so we have a unique situation in Idaho that, at least in our district, that the public library is housed in the high school. So I became the library director, and I served there for 5 or 6 years. And then my superintendent was looking at all of his staff, and he said, well, you have a degree in curriculum. a master's in curriculum. Why are you the library director? And so he recruited me to go to the district office, and I became the curriculum director. And it was during that time that COVID hit. And I had had my online learning experience with the virtual academy, so I knew it was possible. I knew that there was an audience. I knew there were families that were hungry for something different. So I kind of started planting seeds with my superintendents, and I never quite got the traction that I hoped for until COVID hit. And COVID hit, and my superintendent told me, be careful what you wish for. And so we started the online school. I was lucky enough to have the experience I did with the virtual academy, so I knew it was possible. I had some connections that helped me kind of work through the details. And because the virtual academy was a charter school, I really considered becoming a charter. In Idaho, the law says that a traditional school can become a charter school. And so I considered that, but because I served on the state charter commission, I knew how much work it was and the all of the details involved in that. And I just didn't have the bandwidth at the time with all of my other things. And so the superintendent and I talked about it, and we decided to just open another school within the Snake River School District. So it's technically a building. We open a new building in Snake River School District, although it's a virtual building, and the students and families join from all over the state of Idaho. And that's kind of what led me to the conferences that you and I have become acquainted. And I love the fact that we can A, step out of the traditional system to make a difference if we need to, and B, I have hope that we can make a difference within a traditional system. So that's what I'm working on.
So much to talk about there, Sherrilynn. But first, just congratulations on this incredible achievement, obviously on a wonderful career, helping children and working in the public school district in Idaho. So I guess I'd love to start by just where did your vision for Snake River Online come from? You said it was sort of percolating kind of pre-COVID, that you had this idea for your district, and then COVID was really that opportunity, gave you that opportunity with your superintendent's blessing to go ahead. So as the idea was percolating for you, what was it that you were hoping to achieve with Snake River Online? And maybe how was it going to be different in your mind to the Idaho Virtual Academy?
Mhm. So it really percolated because of some specific experiences that I had when I was a teacher for the Idaho Virtual Academy. For example, I had one student that was at grade level in reading, grade level in history and science, all of the things. He was about 8 years old, but he just flew through everything we put in front of him math-wise. And so his mom and I worked really closely together, and oh, well, when he hits, multiplication, that'll slow him down. And oh, no, when he hits division or long division, that will slow him down. Oh, when he gets to decimals and fractions, and that will slow him down. Well, finally, within that one school year, and he was about 8 years old, he finally got slowed down a little bit with exponents. And I realized that students learn different things at different paces, and that his mom had taken him out of the traditional building because he was ready for and hungry to learn math. He just loved it. And he was sitting in a classroom all day long practicing times tables, because that's what you do in third grade. And so that was kind of an epiphany for me to know that there were kids and families that really needed and wanted something different. And I could go on for a long time about experiences with families that I had like that. We had families that were very mobile in the Idaho Virtual Academy. So, you know, we had one family that lived part of the year in California and part of the year here in Idaho in Island Park. I knew that was possible. So I had all of these ideas that I knew were possible, but I just couldn't quite get the system to be flexible enough. But as I said, I kept planting seeds. And then we had a new superintendent. We had COVID, and I had been planting seeds, and my superintendent said, be careful what you wish for. And so that was really the beginning of Snake River Online. So we opened a new school building. I hired teachers. I partnered with the company Overture Learning, and I have to really credit them for sharing the vision. It was really that synergy that, you know, when 2 + 2 equals more than 4. And we came together with this vision, and we were able to make it work. So we started the first year, I think we had about 300 kids. And my superintendent told me that I had to have 200. And then we got to 300. And the next year, you know, we had about 600. And then the next year, about 800. I'm probably getting my years off a little, but right now we have about 1,300, well, over 1,300 students and a waiting list, like you said earlier. So I know that families need and want to learn differently, but sometimes it's really beneficial for them to do so within a school system. So, you know, for example, we have the libraries, so students who are local can come meet with their teachers at the library.
Mm.
Students who are in the online school do take the state required tests. And each family, each student actually gets a budget. So one of the things I'm really proud of is that families who pay taxes into an education system often don't use those tax dollars. And so in the Snake River Online School, each family gets a budget. So a portion of the money that comes from the state to Snake River School District, of course, a portion of it pays the teachers and those expenses, and then a portion of it goes to the families. And the families have the opportunity to choose the curriculum they want. They can choose to pay for internet. They can choose to pay for music lessons. They can choose the independence that they want. There are a few limitations, you know, for example, religious curriculum. We're not allowed to use state funds for families to purchase religious curriculum, but often the funds they would use to pay for curriculum go to pay for something else, which frees up their ability to purchase the religious curriculum that they want.
Sure, right, independently. Um, so Sherrilynn, you mentioned earlier that well, obviously you worked with the Idaho Virtual Academy. You had experience in the charter world. You're actually on the Public Charter School Commission in Idaho. So you have a lot of charter experience. And then something you said earlier really struck me. You said there was just so much that went into opening a charter school that you thought it would be easier, better, more efficient to open a new district school, which just blows my mind that somehow you thought it would be easier to make change within a system and open up a brand new model within your district than going the charter route. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, especially from your lens on the Public Charter School Commission in Idaho, and why was it easier for you in the end as a district school to make a change?
So when you open a charter school in Idaho, they call it Charter 101. And anybody who wants to open a charter school, they go through this Charter School Course 101. And you have to have a founding board, and you have to have a really committed group of people who are willing to work together and create. They have to have a board, they have to have financing, they have to have a facility, they have to have all of the things to open, quote, a regular school, even though it's a charter. And so I knew that that's not what I wanted. I wanted to support families who wanted to learn at home and wanted to learn flexibly, not come to a building, even if it was a charter. And so I called the State Department of Ed and I said, is this possible? How can I do this? And there had been a couple of people that had done this before I did. So I had them to ask questions. And honestly, to open a school in the state of Idaho, it's one form and the superintendent's signature. And we fill out the form and it said, I'm opening a new building. It's Snake River Online. The superintendent signed it. It went to the State Department. They called me, asked some questions, of course, worked with the superintendent and the business manager. And we started enrolling students, and then we fit in as a regular building. So that's how we are funded. So it was really, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was much different than opening a charter school.
Hmm. Okay, so you now have over 1,300 students with a long waiting list. How many teachers do you have, and what are their backgrounds, and what is their interest? I guess what drew them to this online model?
Well, that's one of the things that I was really impressed with that I've told people now that I've come home from Atlanta is that most micro schools, statistically, micro schools, learning pods, charter schools, almost any kind of learning option has been started by teachers who are, for lack of a better word, disillusioned with a traditional system. And so that's where my teachers mostly came from. I think I was mentioning to you when we were visiting in Atlanta, my superintendent said at the beginning, I wanted to hire an administrator and to take care, to do the school, because I still do the library and I do some curriculum. And he said, no, we're going to have our brick and mortar principals evaluate the online teachers. And I said, no way. I said, we can't do that. They don't know anything about what we're doing, and that will be a wreck. And he said, we're going to do it for two reasons. And first of all, I can't have this school be the enemy. This school has to become part of Snake River School District. And I need your teachers to teach the principals, the traditional administrators, what you're doing. So with reluctance, each one of my brick and mortar principals evaluates some of my all of my online teachers. And, at an administrative council, when I was talking about opening this school, one of our principals literally threw his pen down on the table and got up and walked out of the room. And he says, you can't do this. This is dumb. And I was worried and I was scared. And then we kept working at it, and he evaluates all of my teachers are awesome, but he evaluates two of my very best teachers. And he keeps coming to me and saying, do you know what these teachers are doing? Have you seen this? Have you? I said, yeah, I know what they're doing. And it was less than a year later at another administrative council meeting that principal said, congratulations, Snake River Online has earned a seat at the table. And so that's kind of how we fit into the school district. And then as far as hiring teachers, all I had to do is put a posting up and say, I want online teachers. The first year I hired part-time teachers because we weren't quite sure how it was going to go. And then that year, all of my teachers but one wanted to go full-time, and she was having twins, so she didn't want to go full-time. So everybody that wanted to went full-time. Honestly, since then, my superintendent has limited me to hiring only part-time. And that's partly because not only is it a blessing for families and students, but it's a blessing for teachers to have the flexibility and the ability to do what they really want to do, which is help students and families learn. And they can do that differently rather than standing in front of a classroom of 25 second graders and knowing that they are meeting the needs of, maybe a few of the kids in the middle. And it's just not possible. The demands put on traditional teachers in traditional classrooms, it's just not realistic. So I do only hire part-time teachers now, but anytime I need a new teacher, I have plenty of teachers who want to teach in the online environment.
Even though it's only part-time too,
Yes.
just shows how much demand there is on the part of teachers for something new and different. So how many teachers do you currently have at Snake River Online, and are they all certified teachers, or what are their credentials?
Yes, they are all certified teachers in the state of Idaho. It's a law. You have to have certified teachers. So I currently have 20, let's see, we just did a little bit of a different model this year. So I probably have 28 teachers. My full-time teachers have 60 students approximately, and my part-time teachers have approximately 30 students. And one of the things that was the most difficult for my traditional administrators to wrap their heads around is that the teachers teach in a family model. So I don't have a second grade teacher and a third grade teacher and a fourth grade teacher. I have certified teachers K through 8, and they teach a family. So they really get to know the family. They get to know the needs of the family. The families are able to, I love watching it. The families are able to do a unit on, let's say, the Civil War, and the third graders doing their reading and writing and learning at a third grade level, and the eighth grader is doing their reading and writing and learning at an eighth grade level. The other thing that I learned when I worked for the Idaho Virtual Academy that I really loved and that has carried into Snake River Online is that we are also educating the parents. And the parents love learning, and they're so excited that they get to learn along with their students. And when the math becomes too difficult for mom or dads or the adult in the family, when the math learning, for example, becomes a little too different for them, they have the teacher's support right there, and the teacher not only helps the student understand how to do it, but they also teach the family. And the mom's now learning how to do some advanced math that she never learned how to do when she was in school. And to see that excitement and joy for adults to be learning is really an important part of my experience.
Yeah, it sounds so similar to some other founders that I've had on the podcast. I think about Cecile Enright in Grants Pass, Oregon, who's the founder of Reach, River's Edge charter school. And similar, but hers is a charter school, and of course you're doing this in a district model. I think about Julie Young at ASU Prep and ASU Prep Digital, and both of those, again, charters. There's lots of these models in California and other places as well as charter schools. And the thing that they're doing that you're doing as well is having this hybrid option for families where there is that opportunity for in-person connection if and when parents want that. I know you mentioned that in Snake River specifically, within the school district, families are able to come, and students are able to come to the library and have kind of those interactions with teachers in person if they choose. But you're also expanding that throughout the state. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about what's happening in Boise with your cluster of students there.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, as we talked about earlier, we do have students from all over the state. And because of just the populace, the majority of our students come from the Boise Valley. So because we partner with Overture Learning, we have the resources to do on-site programs in Boise. So there are places that teachers can meet with students, first of all, to just do instruction. Second of all, to do testing. All of the families that enroll in Snake River Online understand that they do the state testing. We don't We try hard not, we don't force people, but we help them to see that there is some value. And if families see that there is value in assessment, then they're happy to do it. They want to know how their children are doing. It's when they don't see the value and when they feel like it's a mandate that is a challenge. So we have some physical locations that families can meet to do testing. And then we have on-site field trips. So in all of the regions of Idaho, Idaho's pretty vast state, and in the north and in Boise and here in the southeast, we have on-site programs and field trips and activities that families participate in if they would like to. It's never required, but we have a lot of opportunities that families really appreciate to get together, not only for the learning, but also to meet with and work with like-minded families.
And what are you hearing from families about why they're attracted to this model? I imagine it's similar to the teachers who are attracted to this model, more of that flexibility and freedom with learning. You mentioned some children who might be accelerating in certain subjects and don't want to be held back the way they might be in a conventional district school. You mentioned families who travel frequently and want that flexibility to not be tied to a brick and mortar building 4 or 5 days a week. What else are you hearing from families about why they want this model?
Probably the most important thing that I hear is that the parents have a choice in what their kids are learning and how they are learning. So they have the flexibility for, to spend a lot of time outside learning in nature if that's something that their children do, that their child enjoys and excels in. They have the flexibility to learn in the morning and play, which is also learning, as we know, in the afternoon, that they aren't tied to specific schedules. I know in Salt Lake, one of the things that really resonated with me, and I don't know who said it, but they said we have got to stop focusing on bells, buses, and butts in seats. And as a traditional educator, I go to my administrative councils, and the conversations are bells, buses, schedules, attendance. Those are the conversations in a traditional building. And those are not conversations with my teachers. This families can learn how and when and where and what they want. So that's probably the biggest reason. And then once again, just the flexibility to help students accelerate, or to support them if they aren't quite ready for that learning. It seems so ludicrous and archaic to me to have children's learning experiences determined by their birthdays. That just is silly. And so we're able to move away from that. The other thing that I think about a lot is that in the traditional building, time is the constant and learning is the variable. So kids come to school and they're there from 8 to 4. That's the constant, or, hereabouts. We have a 4-day school week, so it's a little bit longer in our traditional buildings. So time is the constant and learning is the variable. And in the online model, it's just switched so that learning is the constant and time is the variable. It doesn't matter how long it takes. If it takes a short amount of time or a long amount of time, the students can and do learn in the way that works best for them.
I just love everything about this, Sherrilynn. So the parents have sort of maximum curriculum choice. You said that they can't, with taxpayer funds, they can't purchase religious curriculum, but they can purchase a whole variety of other different types of curriculum. And of course, would be certainly able to use their own independent funds for anything that would be faith-based. But isn't that a heavy lift for the teachers then to have to kind of learn all of these curriculum that parents might be choosing? Or how does that whole process work?
That's a really good question, and I get that question a lot, but I've never had a teacher that came on board that was a deterrent. And I think the basic reason is because whatever curriculum it is, it doesn't matter. You're still learning specific skills. So Idaho was a Common Core state, and it's kind of morphed and changed a little bit into the Idaho content standards. But for example, every student is going to learn to write an opinion paper. And it doesn't matter if that opinion comes from a faith-based curriculum or if it comes from a traditional curriculum that may be taught in the brick and mortar building. It's less about the content. Now, don't get me wrong, content matters, but it's less about the content and more about the skills. So that's what our teachers are really strong in, is understanding the skills that we all want every student to be able to do. And then they look at the curriculum, and they have access and samples to most of the curriculum, not all, but then they look at that curriculum and they kind of hone in and isolate the skills, and then they focus more on the skills rather than the specific curriculum. And I believe really strongly that nothing matters more than interest. And one of the things that's really hard for me in a traditional building, and I do see it every day, and that is that kids are, quote, forced to learn something, read something that they're not interested in, they don't want to do. And when that bell rings, they cannot wait to get out of that school. And that just breaks my heart. I want learning to be something that is valued and desired. And I think that starts with interest. And so with families who are learning at home, who are learning differently, they can start with interest. Sometimes the families will say, well, all my kid wants to do is read this or learn about this. And in my experience, and I've been doing this for, in education for 23, 24 years now, and students, if they really love something and they dive into it, they get the skills that they need to then transfer and generalize to the next subject that they love and dive into. So we really focus much more on skills rather than the specific curriculum.
I love that, Sherrilynn. I mean, you're talking about that it breaks your heart when students feel forced to learn something, that you want them to be able to have that choice and that freedom and follow their interests. And it makes me think that that's very much your librarian hat coming to the fore, right? Because I've often thought that if conventional schools, and others have thought this way too, that if conventional schools could look more like public libraries, then it would totally be a game changer for, for public schools, where there's lots of resources, there's lots of adults, to facilitate learning, but you're coming at it through a place of self-direction and interest-based learning, not coercion, the same way that we have in education. Do you feel like there's some overlap there in what you see in your librarian work and in what you're building here?
There is, and that's a good connection that you make, because I have a dream, kind of like Martin Luther King. I have a dream where we can build schools, even traditional schools, that look so much different and that kids love and they want to be there. And that teachers don't spend all of their time preparing lesson plans and teaching to just a narrow group of kids. Another kind of a defining moment with a traditional teacher was when I was at the library earlier. I had a math teacher come in. He was so upset and he was just ready to retire and quit. And he said, I spent so much time preparing these lesson plans and these kids just don't listen. And I thought about it and I thought there's such a difference between teaching and learning. And what that teacher was doing was focusing on teaching. And he was teaching. And again, teaching was the constant, but learning was the variable. And in my dream, in my happy world, we have a school where students come and they, especially in the upper grades, they go to a mentor classroom and all of the curriculum is available physically and online. And if they need to come to school, they come to school, they have a mentor teacher, they go to that room, and their mentor teacher provides a safe place for them to be and learn. And if they get to a sticking point with math, then they pick up their math books and their computer and they walk to the math teacher's classroom and say, hey, I need help with this. So the teachers are supporting the kids where the kids are, not trying to just develop lesson plans that kids aren't ready to learn. I visited a school similar to this in Salt Lake City many years ago, and there was a student who said, I know myself, and I know I need to be here from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, or I will not learn. I will not do my schoolwork. And so he chose to come from 7 to 5 because he knew that's what worked for him. I met another student. She was 16. She had a new baby. And she said, I need to come to school from 3 to 5. So she worked at home with her, taking care of her baby. And then she'd have a list of questions that she needed answered and support she needed from the teachers. And when 3 o'clock came and her mom was able to take the child care for a while, then she would go to school. She'd go see the math teacher and get these questions answered. She'd go to the history teacher, get these questions answered. And they were supporting students in their learning, not in the teacher's teaching.
I want to get back to your dream in a bit because it seems like you're well on your way to realizing this dream with over 1,300 kids. Before we get there and kind of the pathway that you envision for the future of education in this dream that you have for the ways in which district schools can adapt and change to meet the needs of learners and families, I'd love to first talk a little bit about outcomes. So how are you performing? How do you measure success? Obviously, you were saying that the students have to take conventional standardized state exams. So you have that traditional metric, but I imagine you also have some other metrics that are meaningful to you as well. So I wonder if you could share about your measurement strategies.
Yeah. Well, we do, as you said, we do take the state standardized tests, and those test scores are typical. Some are a little higher than a brick and mortar, and some are a little lower. So they're not outstandingly, they're not outstanding in any direction. So we're right there with the learning in that way.
So you're basically comparable
Correct. Yeah.
to traditional district schools.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other measurement that I use, honestly, is just that, as we talk about in the charter world and in the educational choice world, and that is that families choose with their feet and they go to places that work for them. And the fact that we started out with 300 students and we now have 1,300 students with a waiting list in a very short amount of time tells me that this is working for families. And once again, I believe, as we've talked, I really believe strongly that it's not what kids learn, it's that they learn how to learn. And so watching kids take ownership of their learning and demonstrate that not only to their teachers, but to their peers in our on-site programs, in some of our live courses that students can join if they choose to. Those are the kinds of things that are really important to me.
Okay, so now how do we kind of scale this vision, right? How do you achieve this dream beyond what you've already built, which is stunning and impressive? But how does this become more the norm than the exception within traditional district schools?
Honestly, the best thing that happens is word of mouth. And we started, I believe there were 2 or 3 schools, maybe 3 schools that had done this prior to Snake River School District outside of the charter world. Now, there are quite a few online charter schools in Idaho, but there were 2 or 3 that had done this within Idaho's, within the traditional system. And I get calls regularly from superintendents that say, how did you do your online school? And they say that since COVID especially, families know that they have options and they know that they can learn anywhere, anyhow, any way that they want to learn. And so even within our own county here, two of the other schools have opened online schools. People choose to run them a little bit differently, but the word is getting around that you can open a school building and you can offer families choices. So it really is word of mouth that is growing this movement in Idaho and the support of the legislature.
Yeah. And I think it's great that you're getting calls from superintendents who want this in their communities. Do they tend to be from rural school districts like yours, or is it a variety of urban, suburban, and rural?
At this point, it's mostly rural. And I think that's probably just because of our geographic situation that Idaho is such a rural state. And because traditional brick and mortar schools are losing students because they can choose a charter, they can choose an online charter, they can do lots of different options. They can just homeschool. Idaho is very liberal homeschool. Well, there aren't any homeschool laws in Idaho. If you want to if you want to homeschool your student, you just tell your district that you're homeschooling your student. So families are choosing, families know that they have choices and they are choosing things that are different. And the traditional system and the people in the traditional system are becoming more aware.
Yeah, maybe that little bit of that competitive pressure that they feel like they need to change and perhaps want to change to be able to meet the needs of families, or knowing that families now have more ability to exit if they choose. Tell us a little bit more before we wrap up, Sherrilynn, about Blackfoot, Idaho, where your district is located. What are the demographics there? You said it's a rural community. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, we're in Bingham County, and Bingham County is the potato capital of the world. So we are very strongly agriculture, very rural. There are, I haven't looked at the numbers lately. With the online school, we really almost doubled the size of the district. I think we have 500 kids in our high school. So there's 5 schools in our county. They're all, comparable size. Some are a little bit bigger and smaller, but it's very rural and very agriculture based.
So, as we wrap up this amazing conversation, Sherrilynn, I'd love to hear what steps that you think those listening and watching who want to do something like this in their own districts should consider, whether they're teachers or librarians working in a conventional school system, or even superintendents, as you said, who have been interested in this model. What are some of those first steps that you think people wanting to make change in district can do to make that happen?
I think the first step probably is to just start having difficult conversations and planting seeds, because you can't force someone to hear a message they're not ready to hear, but never underestimate the power of planting seeds. Excuse me. So I would encourage people to just start having conversations amongst teachers and between teachers and administrators, and say, I'd really want to do something different. I don't want to come to work every week and get burned out. I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier and talking about teachers who just get burned out. And one of the teachers that works for the online school, she said, I just couldn't go to school every day anymore and realize that I gave everything I had to this group of kids. And then I went home and I had nothing left. And
Yes, that was
so
Becky McNichols, a recent
that's it.
podcast. So great. Yeah.
And so we just have to start having difficult conversations and being willing to say, I really do think we can do this differently. And calling people, talking to people, asking questions. And it does come down to state laws as well, because our Idaho legislature is very open to school choice. then the law and the funding formula allows us to do it the way that we do. I don't I don't know about other states' laws, but I do know when I talk to people, they say, "Oh, I don't think our state laws allow for that." So that would be another thing, is to form a relationship with some of your state leaders and even have conversations with legislators.
Great advice on local and potentially state changes to enable more in-district innovation. Sherrilynn, how can my listeners and viewers learn more about Snake River Online and follow your progress?
Well, thank you for asking that. And I don't have a great online presence at this point, but you can provide them with my email address, and anybody is welcome to email me anytime, and I will be happy to. I can and will talk about this all day long because I'm really passionate about it. So I'll share that with them. I'll share contacts within our state legislators that could talk to their state legislators, our state superintendent that can talk to their state superintendent. It really is all about connections and bringing the right people to the table. And I can help people with that.
So great. Sherrilynn Bair, best wishes to you. And thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you, Carrie. It's been a real pleasure, and I really look forward to connecting again at Excel in Ed, and hopefully our paths will cross in other ways too.